Hello, I am the President of NISBAT, C. Paul Singh. I welcome you all this evening on our third interactive session on cyber disruption and protection. This is a new series, interactive session we have started. We were having earlier webinars and we have already done 124 edition of webinars. Today, this interactive series is the third in the session. And the idea is that you understand our point of view or the speaker's point of view, and we understand you. So understand and be understood is the caption of this series. I'm sure the delegates who have come from various countries will certainly like this session and carry home the points given by which will be given by our eminent speaker, Dr. Pawan Dugal. With these words, I like to introduce NISBAT, that is National Institute of Security Safety Management Applied Technology, started 3 decades back. We started courses in private security, safety, and applied technology. We also conducted courses at that time for the Defense Forces personnel to provide them training for their second career in the private security industry. We also have been conducting courses to train certain teams who are conducting risk management all over the country and have done commendable work. We aspire to become foremost training institute, corporate training institute in India, and a think tank organization, and have established 4 wings. The first wing is NISBAT Forum. The second is NISBAT Academy. The third is NISBAT Enterprises. And the fourth is NISBAT Foundation. NISBAT Foundation, which we intend to establish in due course of time, shall undertake welfare and social work for the society at large, with particular reference to security and safety. As you know, nowadays this has become a sort of everywhere a concern of safety and security. Will impart training free of cost, go to the RRW and do the work as a trust. I may introduce the chairman, Mr. Pawan Ahluwalia. He is the captain Ahluwalia in the regiment, parachute regiment of the Indian Army, took retirement at a very young age and jumped into a business career with his hard work, humility, and all, at the same time, perseverance. He has achieved a position of prominence in the business world today. His offices are located not only in India, but all over in the Southeast Asian countries. Founder member of the International Business Research Organization, Hong Kong, and also a member of the World Association of Detectives. Mr. Ahluwalia has remained president and former chairman of the Council of International Investigators, USA. He is awardee of Malcolm Thompson Award, as well as Kutelia Award by the Council of International Investigation. He shall moderate the session. In a few minutes, I'll introduce the subject. Introduction of subject in terms of, if I introduce the subject, I told once to Dr. Dutta, it is showing a light to the sun. We are not competent to talk anything in the presence of Dr. Pawan Dugal. He is considered to be expert and master in this subject. Anyway, for the benefit of the delegates, I like to say a few words. Just as physical security protects physical assets and person and the people, cyber security protects computers, systems, data, preventing cyber criminals for accessing your data, harming you, modifying your data, or disrupting your digital data. The importance of cybersecurity is there because the human society as such, as we know, is becoming more and more digitalized, and we cannot simultaneously deny the importance of cybersecurity. Security breaches, security threats can adversely affect all systems. Maybe it is phone call, maybe it's emails, maybe it's text messages, maybe it's WhatsApp messages. It can seriously affect our financial systems also, like our bank accounts, credit cards, debit cards, etc. All the institution, irrespective of effect to which particular sector they belong to, are amenable to be target of the cyber criminals. And these cyber criminals may take out data to be used by your rivals, your competitors, or even enemy agents. No, transportation section, you could say, health sector, education sector, all, are prone to risk by cyber attacks. Websites and applications are naturally a gateway for the cyber criminals. And the main objective of cybersecurity is protecting this data. Principles that can ensure security of data are confidentiality and blocking access to your sensitive data. Measures to prevent corruption or loss of sensitive data should be taken. Integrity measures to recover your data urgently if it has been lost. And your data should remain available but duly protected. Thus, the so-called triangle, as they call in the cyber terms, is confidentiality, integrity, and availability are the important three angles for any data protection exercise. The subject of cyber disruption and protection of records shall be dealt at length by our eminent speaker, Dr. Pawan Dugal. I'll not elaborate further due to limited time available, but I'll urge all of you to please listen to him intently and put up your questions, put up your doubts. Make us also understand your point of view. With these words, I'll pass on the proceedings to Mr. Pawan Ahluwalia, who is moderating the session. Thank you very much, Mr. Pawan Ahluwalia. You may take over.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I'd like to start by thanking the sponsors of the event today. The event has been sponsored by Premier Consulting and Investigations Private Limited. And the event is supported by Tag Scores, which is an examinations platform, Premier Shield, a security company, India Skills, an assessment company, and JMD Cargo, export organization. Today, we have participants from India, Singapore, Kenya, France, UK, and the UAE. During the course of the webinar, please have your selves muted and have your cameras on. And in case the speaker goes off because of an electricity disruption, just stay on till he gets back. I'll take a minute to introduce our illustrious president. Our president is a master's in English literature, and he has served the Indian government in very senior appointments across the country. He was made responsible by the government of India to raise a new force called the Rapid Action Force, and he was also appointed its first chief in India. He also raised and then headed the Internal Security Academy, a central police academy at Mount Abu in the state of Rajasthan. During his distinguished career, he has been decorated with the President's Police Medal for Distinguished Services, the Indian Police Medal for Meritorious Services, Police Special Duty Medal with Bar, a Sena Medal, and a number of other commendations and rewards. After retirement, he was awarded the Security Personality of the Year award by the President of India in the year 2009. He currently is an advisor to the Asian Professional Security Association, the Indian chapter, and he is the Honorary Director General for the Central Association of Private Security Industry and the Association of Private Detectives in India. Mr. Sipal's face is a well-known face across the country. as he has appeared in a number of television channels giving his professional opinion to the television companies. I would now introduce Mr. Pawan Dugal, who is the speaker of the day. Pawan is the chairman of the International Commission on Cyber Security Law. He's an advocate in the Supreme Court of India. He is the conference director for the International Conference on Cyber Law, Cybercrime, and Cyber Security. He is the chief executive for Artificial Intelligence Law Hub. He is the president of Cyber Law Asia. While a practicing advocate in the Supreme Court of India, Mr. Pawan Dugal has made an immense impact with an international reputation as an expert and authority on cyber law, cyber security law, artificial intelligence law, and e-commerce law. He heads his niche law firm, Pawan Dugal Associates, which has practice areas amongst others in cyber law, business process outsourcing law, intellectual property rights and information technology law, information security law, defense, biotech, and corporate law. Mr. Dugal has been acknowledged as one of the top 4 cyber lawyers around the world. Mr. Dugal is also a member of the WIPO Arbitration and Mediation Center panel of neutrals. Mr. Pawan Dugal, in association with International Telecommunications Union, conducted training cum sensitization programs for the elected judges and officers of the International Court of Justice at The Hague, Netherlands. He is a thought leader. Dr. Dugal has suggested that India requires a new legislation that is wholly dedicated to cybersecurity. Pawan is an international expert and authority. He conducts 44 different online courses at the Cyber Law University, which has been subscribed by more than 26,000 students from 172 countries, speaking 52 national languages. Pawan is a member of the Board of Global Ethics, global network of persons and institutions interested in various fields of applied ethics. Pawan is a regular on the lecture circuit. He has spoken at over 2,000 conferences, seminars, and workshops in the last 20 years. He has lectured extensively in select law colleges. As a writer, he has made his mark by writing 154 books on various aspects in law. He had contributed a continuing weekly column on diverse aspects of the law titled Brief Cases to the Economic Times for almost a decade. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Pawan Dugal. Pawanji, you are muted.
Thank you, Pawanji. Thank you, Mr. Singh, and the distinguished personalities present today. Well, it's a very different topic that I'm asked to talk today. And this topic is something that's extremely relevant, which is the topic on cyber disruptions. So I plan to just give some thoughts of what I see on the horizon, and then open up to certain discussions. I will try to share my screen. So when I talk about the subject of cyber disruptions and protection, clearly there's a lot to talk about. Why? Because things are happening all around. Cyberspace has become a part of our lives, and we have all begun to start becoming reliant on cyberspace. No wonder the data breaches are coming left, right, and center. So whether it's a healthcare organization in the US that gets impacted in terms of a data breach, or whether it's a mobile company like T-Mobile, who finds that millions of its data has been targeted in a sophisticated cyber attack. Everybody is finding some way or the other how their day-to-day operations are being impacted by cyber attacks. Accenture, as a company, suddenly found that it was hit by a massive ransomware attack. And it's become the latest celebrated victim of this global cyber pandemic, as we call it. No wonder, today, anything that can be attacked will be attacked. Anything that can be disrupted will be disrupted. That's the norm, that's the mantra that cyber criminals are following. So because it's COVID-19 times, health data becomes important. Therefore, health systems become the most fertile target for cyber disruptions. Well, if you're a hacker group, you want to target a train system. You want to target a critical information infrastructure so that you can go ahead and disrupt the lives of not just one, two, but many, even hundreds and thousands of people who are dependent on such kinds of services. Pegasus has seen a lot of traction globally and in India, but ultimately Pegasus is also kind of cyber disruption. When you get a spyware within your own phone for the purposes of monitoring yourself on a 24/7 basis. So cyber disruption is a new phenomenon that we have to now increasingly start getting used to. And the cyber disruption can be said to be a either temporary or permanent loss of access to service, or which impacts on users of the cloud service which rely on the community. It's not just only cloud, it's now the internet, it's cyberspace, it's all across. So the purpose of cyber disruptions primarily is to disrupt the actual working of cyber networks and cyber resources in such a manner so as to impact not just the people's reliance on such networks, but also disrupt their day-to-day activities and business governance and other operations as a whole. No wonder cyber attacks today represent a new manifestation of cyber disruptions. Today, an attack is aimed to disrupt more, cause more losses, and cause irreparable damage to the target victim. So whether it's an attack by a state or a non-state actor, disruption appears to be a common stream. So much so that in March 2020, we found that a hospital, the Brno University Hospital in the city of Brno, became a target of a big cyber disruption attack, where the attack was so severe that they had to shut down all their operations and surgeries because the IT network of the hospital had collapsed. So when you are in the US and you think you're safe, you're mistaken. Even in the US, you find the ransomware guys are able to successfully target the US colonial pipeline and are able to get back more than $5 million in Bitcoins, because the company says it's best to pay these guys off and then get access back to your various IT networks rather than to lose that and spend far more amount of money in trying to restore or make it back. Even in India, in October 2020, when there was a massive power outage in Mumbai, clearly it was a classical case where there was a cyber attack from China. The idea was very clear. They wanted to disrupt the power system, the power networks of Western India, where is the commercial capital of the India, and therefore impact business operations. So the focus is all upon disrupting the global critical information infrastructure in whatever manner. Almost all disruptions that you see are primarily aimed at the global critical information infrastructure. Today, even a cyber terror is nothing but a cyber disruption. So when these terrorist attacks are being targeted on cyberspace through cyber criminals, they also represent distinctive kinds of cyber disruptions. Ultimately, I can even go to say that even if it's not a terrorist attack, but if the cyber disruption is of such a nature that you aim to destabilize or completely immobilize the target systems in such a manner that it creates terror or panic in the minds or the hearts of the targeted victims or the users of such critical information infrastructure, I think that will also constitute as cyber defamation, cyber terrorism per se. Now, when I look at the Indian cyber law, I find cyber disruption has not been specifically targeted. So we have to only look at certain existing provisions of the Indian IT Act. So you can rely upon Section 66 and 43 the IT Act because ultimately a cyber disruption is a computer-related cybercrime and therefore can be brought under the broad umbrella. But despite that, we find that there are numerous challenges that are thrown up by cyber disruptions. The first challenge is how do you identify the source of such cyber disruption? Because today, cyber criminals are very, very smart. State and non-state actors routinely use VPNs, anonymizers, and other devices which can help clean their footprints on cyberspace. So trying to detect the real identity becomes a big challenge. On top of it, we have to quickly realize that internet jurisdiction becomes a big challenge. Internet has made geography history, but a man sitting somewhere in Canada can target the systems located in India, and yet we relax that, look, he may not be caught. So this entire issue of internet jurisdiction is presenting immense amount of practical problems from the perspective of effectively legally regulating and trying to control cyber disruptions. Clear identification of cyber actor is a crucial necessity, but unfortunately, we are going nowhere. Why? Because most of the actors have now even begun to start migrating onto the darknet. Because if you use the anonymity of the darknet for committing cyber disruption, then you are relatively well assured that you are not potentially going to be targeted by any action of any law enforcement agencies. No wonder in this age and era of cyber disruptions, we have to adopt cybersecurity as a way of life. Because if you don't do that, you have to quickly realize that your cybersecurity is the only umbrella, is the only raincoat that you are adopting, you're wearing when you're going out in rain. And if your umbrella is not going to be strong, your raincoat is not going to be robust, the chances are that you will get a wet in this rain of cyber attacks. Globally, there is complete chaos. Why? There's a complete policy vacuum available. There's no international cyber law in place. There's also no international cyber security law in place. So each one to its own. That's what's happening. Actually speaking, state actors are doing both covert and overt activities. And they do not really want their activities to be found out and them to be named or shaped. That's the reason why they're not really very pushing forward in the direction of coming up with an international legal framework on cyber legal events or aspects or stuff like that. So clearly governments have started saying, okay, let the vacuum at the international level continue. Let's come up with national laws on cybersecurity. So cybersecurity is increasingly now being sought to be regulated through distinctive national legislations that are passed in different countries. When I look at the ambit of countries that have already come up with dedicated laws on cybersecurity, I realize that these countries are getting more and more powerful because under the garb of their national cybersecurity laws, they're able to now deal with a large variety of circumstances, issues, aspects, and events which they would not otherwise be able to deal with, which deal with the entire issue of detection, investigation, prosecution of cybercrime, or even for protection and preservation of cybersecurity. So clearly, we have to start realizing that cyber law plays a very important role in the entire issue of regulating cyber disruption. But in India, we don't have a very kind of a topical law. Our Indian cyber law is 21 years old that we enacted in the year 2000. Yet it continues to be India's mother legislation for all aspects pertaining to the electronic format. Now, at the end of the day, if I look at it broadly, the cyber disruption event can be seen as a breach of cybersecurity of computer systems and networks. And therefore, while we can cover them under some aspects of the Indian Information Technology Act 2000, the coverage is not going to be very extensive or exhaustive. Further, I find that there is lack of appropriate international collaboration while dealing with the entire aspect of cyber disruption. No country wants to collaborate with anyone else in this regard. So, till such time you don't have these international frameworks, it will be very hard for countries to start regulating and controlling cyber disruptions at national level through national laws. So countries have said, okay, Let me now come up with a new way. So countries like China began with the concept of cyber sovereignty. They said the sovereignty of my nation extends not just to my territorial boundaries, but also to cyberspace, to deep sea water and the outer space, and also to the various other geographical regions of the world. So if you look at the cybersecurity law of Vietnam, it says the entire internet is my national cyberspace. And my law, my cybersecurity law, is going to be applicable to the same. So clearly, we have to realize that the target of cyber disruptions today is the data economy, where the data is the new oil of the new data economy. And it's this data that they want to potentially target. And cyber disruptors are today increasingly using some latest cutting-edge emerging technologies for the purposes of trying to disrupt the target victims or their networks or systems. Artificial intelligence has come in as a very distinctive boon for cyber disruptors who are now openly using artificial intelligence for disrupting the operations of people. So much so that you go to the dark net, you can actually see some websites who are advertising cybercrime as a service by using artificial intelligence. We are all dependent on the cloud. The Gmails of ours are all located on the cloud, but this cloud is what's potentially going to be targeted by cyber disruptions, because it's on the cloud our data is residing, and this data becomes of crucial necessity. Blockchains and Bitcoins are also now going to be targeted by cyber disruptions. Why? Because they are now the new green field as far as the emerging technologies are concerned. And it's now open secret. You just go and hack into crypto asset exchange, and you steal all the Bitcoins there or all the cryptocurrencies there. And lo and behold, you suddenly become rich overnight, and you realize that the legal frameworks are not yet adequate to deal with these exercises. On top of it, if you are subscribing to the Internet of Things, you quickly realize that this is like a heaven, a dream come true, because on the Internet of Things, and now on the newly evolving Internet of Behavior, we are beginning to find that there's absence of even basic parameters of cybersecurity. So disrupting operations on Internet of Things or Internet of Behavior is becoming very, very easy and is becoming almost a child's play. On top of it, today, cyber disruptors want to target the facial recognition data, because this data, when they are able to sell, they are able to get huge volumes of money. So the facial recognition data dumps are increasingly now becoming the new fertile targets of cyber disruptors. The coming of newly emerging technologies like quantum computing are telling us that, look, these cyber disruptors are increasingly going to use newly disrupting technologies like quantum computing to go ahead and break passwords of systems, algorithms, networks, and servers, and thereby go ahead and steal all kinds of data. And if you really want to disrupt cyber operations, go nowhere, just go into the dark net, because this is the deep, dark underbelly of the internet where there is no attribution. You cannot be found out. The service providers do not give your identity. So you can really be snugly hiding behind the cloak of anonymity and conducting all kinds of cyber disruptions. So in this echo of cyber disruptions era that we are living in, data protection becomes important because your data is on attack. So whether it's the data protection laws in different countries, which are encouraging people to comply with minimum standards of data protection, like the European Data Protection Regulation, GDPR, or whether it's going to be a forthcoming Personal Data Protection Bill 2019 that's expected to be coming in India as well. But the effect of cyber disruptions is ultimately on our privacy. When you disrupt a cyber system and the data that's resident there, you not only cause the death knell of the data privacy of an individual, but also impact the personal privacy of an individual as well. So no wonder cyber disruptions will be an essential, important element of the newly emerging cyber world order that we are going to be seeing in the next few months and years. In my new book, New Cyber World Order Post-COVID-19, I've said that by the time the world is victorious against the current and subsequent wave of COVID-19 infections, there are going to be a new paradigm that will be awaiting for us. There'll be a new cyber world order where states will become very powerful, where cybercrime will be the new default option, where increasing cyber security breaches will be a daily phenomenon, and where there's going to be increasing interference in the enjoyment of human rights, of basic digital liberties. When I look at the list of countries who've come up with laws on coronavirus during COVID-19 times, I realize that ultimately these laws are aimed at strengthening the hands of nation states, making them far more powerful. This assumes more significance because the coming of COVID-19 has actually signaled the beginning of the golden age of cybercrime. Cybercrime was with us for the last 50 years of the internet history, but ever since COVID-19 has come, the manner in which it has grown, the economic impact and the losses that's causing is phenomenal. And this golden age of cybercrime is going to be with us for the next few decades. So whether the world lost only $6 trillion by the end of 2020, or whether the world is likely to lose more than $8 trillion by the end of 2021, these are now the new ground realities that we'll have to start waking up to. So we have to suddenly start realizing that it's not the government's job alone to fight cyber disruptions. We will have to not only start adopting cybersecurity as a way of life, but also have to start getting more duly diligent in our approaches. And ultimately, we'll have to wholeheartedly adopt digital transformation. Because when I digitally transform myself, one of the fundamental tenets of digital transformation is that I make my digital transformed avatar, my data, my ecosystem far more secure, robust. And with the coming of COVID-19 and with work from home coming in, it's now a new era. Why? Because while we continue to work from the benefit and comfort of our home, we are also now seeing a new normal where the number of attacks on work from home devices have massively increased. And the work from home is also now beginning to see new paradigms where even your employees are copying your own data as a company. And then they are selling their said data for competition for a variety of other stakeholders. And when I find a 300% increase in cyber attacks on devices used to work from home, I'm not surprised. Why? Because this was bound to happen. India as a nation was not even prepared for work from home. And the legal frameworks are definitely not up to the mark as far as being prepared for these new eventualities. Video conferencing has become our lifeline. But this video conferencing is now also becoming a very fertile target for cyber disruptors who are going ahead and disrupting this video conferencing facilities and the data and video meetings almost at will. So when you create chaos, you ultimately feel very happy. Why? Because you're causing lots of damage in terms of money. You're ultimately making people suffer. And somewhere down the line, you as a cyber criminal are going to get satisfied in terms of fulfillment of your vested interests per se. So in this new ecosystem where cyber disruptions will be our new normal, we have to start adopting cyber insurance very wholeheartedly. Because let's take it as a given, yes, we will all be targeted. There's no denying the fact. So once we will be disrupted, what will happen? Shall we start reinventing the wheel? Clearly that's not on. So if we start having in place comprehensive cyber insurance covers, that I think could be a good approach. Further, also, there'll be a need for more holistic approaches on cyber disruptions that will need to be adopted, because cyber disruptions will keep on continuing to grow. Unfortunately, they have not yet become a priority for governments, but they will soon have to become a priority because ultimately big data economy is providing a wonderful launching pad for these cyber disruption methodologies and attacks. And if you're not having in place not just adequate enabling legal frameworks, but also effectively enforcing the same, we could potentially be in a much bigger problem. So I think there'll be a need for a more holistic approach at the levels of governments, at the levels of corporates, and at the levels of individuals, so as to deal specifically with the entire paradigm pertaining to cyber disruptions, and therefore enhancing our capacities will be of topmost priority. They say ignorance is bliss. So once you know about these cyber disruptions, at least then you'll start getting more aware and more duly diligent in taking appropriate steps to prevent these kinds of cyber attacks. It's in this context that I'm the Honorary Chancellor of an online university known as Cyber Law University. And we are offering various international certification courses on cyber law, cybercrime law, cybersecurity law, and artificial intelligence law. And also we are offering courses, an undergraduate course on cyber law with the National Law University at Ranchi. So when your courses in the last few years get done by more than 26,000 students from 172 countries, what do they tell you? They tell you there's an immense pent-up demand for cyber skilling. And today, with the coming of COVID-19, there is no looking back. You have no options but to enhance your cyber skill set so that you can be very well prepared to deal with these newly emerging cyber disruptions. And to talk more about the emerging trends in cyberspace, I'm the conference director of an international conference, being the International Conference on Cyber Law, Cybercrime, Cybersecurity, the world's only authoritative conference on the said subjects. This year, it's taking place virtually in COVID-19 times from the 24th to the 26th of November. And I'll take this opportunity to invite all of you to come and join us. At our law firm, every day is a new day because you learn everything new. So when you work on the intersection of law and technology, on the day one, technology teaches you one fundamental principle, that you know nothing and I know everything. So once, as a lawyer, you realize that every day has to be a learning experience. You really begin to start realizing that, yes, as technology is changing, the legal frameworks, the legal methodologies, and approaches will have to be appropriately adopted in this regard as we go forward. Ultimately, I'll just like to close down by saying that in today's data-driven world, holistic data approaches, both legal, technical, and otherwise will have to be adopted by companies to protect their legal and other business interests. And therefore, it will be very essential that you must be seen to be complying with applicable parameters under the existing cyber legal frameworks, cybersecurity regulations, if you have to be in the right side of the law. Recently, only a few days back, we found that China in 2021 has now declared that Alibaba was violating cyber security law in 2019. So that's now the new paradigm of our times. Governments can come back after many years and tell you, you were violating the law and can penalize you. And when I look at the Information Technology Rules 2021 passed in India, I can tell you the amount of powers that are given to the government are phenomenal. So it's best to be on the right side of the law. It's best to ensure compliance with applicable law so that in the event once you get attacked by a cyber disruption, not only can you be seen to be on the right side of the law, but you would have appropriate mechanisms to bounce back to normalcy. Ultimately, the mantra is going to be all of cyber resilience. Let's take it as a given, yes, that we are all going to be targeted. The question is how quickly and how soon can we come back to a state of normalcy? That is what's going to be the fundamental issue. And in this context, therefore, let's be alive to cyber disruptions. Let's await them because they're going to come and hit us one way or the other at some time of future or the other. So best way is to be in a state of constant preparedness, and constant vigil will have to be the price that you will have to pay as a digital stakeholder if you would want to have the security of not just your personal, but also your business and professional data, and also the security of your computer systems, networks, and servers at large. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. It's been a pleasure talking, and over to you, Mr. Chairperson.
Thank you, Pawan. Thank you very much for your illuminating talk. I'd begin by asking a question. I just read somewhere that there are two new cyber threats which have come in. One is called machine learning poisoning, and the other is called deep fake. Can you throw some light on these two words, machine learning poisoning and deep fake?
Machine learning poisoning is referring to a new phenomenon. Actually, machine learning is nothing but the process by means of which the computers learn by themselves. They are an initial levels of what we call as artificial intelligence. So please understand, a computer does not have a mind of its own. It has some cognitive intelligence, but the cognitive intelligence is dependent on the data sets that are fed in. So if you are able to poison the data sets of data that's fed into a system, clearly the machine learning processes are going to be poisoned. And therefore, we talk of this new world or the new paradigm called machine learning poisoning per se. So let me give an example. Today, you have a machine learning algorithm. Rather than giving data which will say that murdering people is bad, if you start feeding constantly data which tells the system that murdering people is a normal phenomenon, is a normal expected norm, then the system starts reading the set data and says, okay, murdering people is a normal norm. That, I think, is a classical example to tell you how machine learning systems are sought to be poisoned. Now, that's a very basic example, but that can give you a broad idea. Similarly, if I'll give you yet another example, in America, they found that the AI algorithm systems were discriminatory against blacks, because most of the data that was fed in the artificial intelligence algorithms was prepared by white people, was for white people, and was directed at white people. So since they didn't have very much kind of referencing to black people or to Negroes or other people, they quickly started realizing that the system started coming up with decisions which were discriminatory against the people with black color skin. That was yet another example of machine learning poisoning that we can talk of. The second thing that you asked was that of deepfake. Deepfake is a new technology that's been with us for the last few years. It effectively is a technology by means of which you can tamper the lip movement in a video and change the audio at the back end so as to present a completely new picture rather than what was originally said. So let's take an example. President Obama said something normal in a normal video. So some people use this technology to change his lip movements and to get a comedian to speak in the language of or in the styling of Barack Obama, talking something that was completely ridiculous and completely different. And it was so effectively done that such kind of changes in the videos were not decipherable using the naked eye. So today, you may be saying something differently in the public domain, but your videos can be taken down, can be doctored, can be artificially going ahead and changed or morphed in such a manner that they present a completely new picture, merely by changing the lip movements and by changing the voice at the back. So that's known as deepfake. It's no longer a Western phenomenon. It's already happening in India. I've begun to start seeing cases coming to me where people are becoming the victims of deep fake videos, because now if you are somebody who's important or somebody who's got tons of money, you find that your deep fake videos are being generated, and then they're asking you monies for not distributing such deep fake videos. So I think that's a new paradigm that we will have to start living with as we go forward. Thanks.
Thank you. Colonel John Chinatra, you have a question, please ask. You are muted, John. You got to unmute yourself.
My company has actually got two enemies. One is the cyber attacker or the hacker, and the second are the penalties imposed by GDPR and other laws. Okay. Actually, my company is a victim. How can my risk be mitigated? Is there an insurance that can protect me? And does the principle of hot pursuit apply in this case? Because the attack may come from China, from Pakistan, from the US. Can I or my country carry out hot pursuit the way we have in the army?
First and foremost, the concept of hot pursuit is non-existent in the cyberspace jurisprudence, primarily because of the limitations of jurisdiction. Your laws are applicable within the territorial boundaries of your country, and your laws are no longer applicable. So rather than hot pursuit, the cyberspace jurisprudence has come up with the process of MLATs, or mutual legal assistance treaties, where you can use the processes for exchange of information. But with the extremely slow pace with which the MLAT processes are currently functioning, they're effectively dead before they actually begin. So the hot pursuit is non-existent. But yes, the attacks that your company will potentially face will not only be from India, but also outside India. But once you face these attacks, what's your remedy? Couple of things. When you are a company in India, you are not only dealing with your data, you're also dealing with third-party data pertaining to your employees, your customers, your clients, your vendors, your suppliers, and the like, or even the users on your platforms. So once you're dealing with third-party data, you become an intermediary under Section 21W of the Indian Information Technology Act. Once you are an intermediary, then your best bet forward is that under Section 79 of the IT Act, the law says that it will grant you a statutory exemption from legal liability for any third-party data, provided you exercise due diligence while you discharge your obligations as an intermediary, you comply with the IT Act and rules and regulations, you yourself do not commit or aid in the commission of any offense, and once the government calls upon you to do certain activities pertaining to data, you must do that expeditiously without vitiating the original electronic evidence. Now, those are some 4 parameters that you have to fulfill. If you do that, it's like Lord Krishna telling Arjuna during the Gita discourse of Mahabharata that come to my Sharan and I will protect you. That's the message that the IT Act is giving you. Come and comply with my parameters and I guarantee you, everybody can sue you, but you cannot be sent to jail. You cannot be forced to pay 1 rupee damages by way of compensation. And that's the ultimate comfort zone that I would want your company to come in. So please ensure your documented compliances and therefore ensure that you are relatively secure from these kinds of exposures. Well, you can always take cyber insurance covers, but the devil is in the detail. So please read the terms and conditions of these cyber insurance covers. Most of them look very glossy and sexy from top, but if you don't read the fine print, the chances are that you're going to be taken for a ride. Why? Because these fine print tremendously excludes almost all of what you are ultimately planning to cover. So if you're not going to put your foot down and not going to read the fine print of these cyber insurance covers or policies, the chances are that you may not be able to get effective relief at the time when you are attacked by the cyber attack. Unfortunately, at the time when we talk, India does not have any dedicated legal frameworks to support cyber insurance. But now with more and more cyber attacks coming in, it's only a question of time before the government starts mandating all companies to start having minimum cyber insurance covers for minimum periods of time. Those are some initial times. Look, these are only limited steps that you can do at your own level. Please realize we are all exposed. We are all potentially under attack. It's only a question of when we are going to be attacked. It's not a question of whether we'll be attacked or not. So therefore, in a scenario like this, exercise of due diligence, trying to ensure compliance with applicable laws, trying not to do anything which is in violation of the law, and trying to have appropriate disaster recovery mechanisms, including having appropriate backups and disaster recovery locations, would be good strategies as you go forward to meet up with these untoward challenges. Thanks.
So your second point, I wanted a clarification. Do you mean that I am indemnified by the government of India against the penalties that can be imposed on my company if I do everything right as far as compliance is concerned?
It's not just indemnification, it's a guarantee that you cannot be sent to jail. You cannot be forced to pay 1 rupee damages by way of compensation. This is given under Section 79 of the IT Act. The Supreme Court has already upheld the constitutional validity of Section 79 of the IT Act in 2015 in the case of Shreya Singhal versus Union of India. So, but that comes with a caveat. The caveat is that you must fulfill 4 conditions. Number 1, you must comply with the IT Act and rules and regulations, including the Information Technology Rules 2021, which have completely changed the landscape, which have come into effect from 25th of February 2021. The second thing is, you must exercise due diligence while you discharge your obligations as an intermediary under the IT Act, which means that you must fulfill the various parameters of due diligence which are given under the IT Act and rules and regulations made thereunder. Number 3, you must not yourself commit a cybercrime, or yourself must not abet or conspire in the commission of any criminal activity or offense. And number 4, once the government asks you to remove any particular data, you must do the same expeditiously without vitiating or without modifying the original electronic evidence in any manner whatsoever. So if these 4 conditions you fulfill, then you are in a very wonderful and a safe zone. Remember, all these big social media companies were all enjoying this wonderful benefits of these statutory exemption from legal liability. And that's why no cases against them were being successful from 2008 till 2021. But come the 2021 rules, the IT rules of 2021, and they've now clarified. You don't comply with the IT Act and the IT rules, your statutory exemption from legal liability is withdrawn by way of operation of law. The government does not do that. You do it. So in a scenario like this, you have to quickly start realizing that your statutory exemption from legal liability is going to be dependent on whether and how you're going to effectively comply with these parameters. So those are essential things that you need to keep in mind as you go forward. Thanks.
There's a question from Keshav Kumar. Keshav, please go ahead and ask your question. Keshav, are you there? Anyway, I'll ask the question on his behalf. He said, can we identify the preparators of a cyber attack, and can they be traced?
The practical problem is that it's very difficult to identify the perpetrators of a cyber attack. Most of the time, these are cyber actors, whether state actors or non-actors. Most of the time, these guys use VPNs, anonymizers, and other latest technologies which help them to wipe their electronic footprints. Most of the time, now these perpetrators are increasingly hiding behind the cloak of anonymity of the darknet. So trying to identify who is the attacker who's attacked you is like a huge challenge. And almost in 95% of the cases, we are not successful in really finding out the real identity. So therefore, we should not even try to find out the real identity of the cyber attacker. Rather, we should focus on how can we protect ourselves. And if the attack comes, which it will come in any way whatsoever, how quickly are we more prepared? And how quickly can we come back to a state of normalcy? And how much can we minimize our potential damage to such of operations of ours, thanks to the cyber attacks? That's what's most important. And assuming even in 5% of the cases you are successful in identifying who the cyber actor is, getting the said cyber actor from another jurisdiction to your country becomes a humongous challenge. Primarily because India does not have extradition treaties with large number of countries, and the number of countries do not really want to hand over these kind of cyber criminals to them, because these cyber criminals become important ammunitions for the governments of those countries to start doing all kinds of unwarranted or illegal activities. So governments want to shoot from the shoulders of these cyber criminals and cyber breachers. Therefore, practically speaking, we haven't really found any much success when we talk of trying to identify the origin of these cyber attackers or cyber disruptors. Thanks.
Pawan, can you just throw some light on the type of protection that families need to take? Children, everybody's got children, grandchildren coming up now. How do we protect the families? How do we protect children? And what is the kind of advice that you would like to give to people who are at home and probably not very aware of all the cyber situations that are going on?
Thank you, sir. I think today you have to realize that we are in a new age where India is seeing a unique revolution that we had never seen ever since we got independent. I call it the Great Indian Vomiting Revolution. Indians are vomiting data pertaining to their personal, professional, social lives on the internet without even understanding the ramifications that it will have upon yourself, upon your future. And if you have a family, you're a family man, then it's an even more bigger responsibility for you to sensitize your family members during the pandemic that use internet with care. Because even when we are now totally dependent onto the internet, we are forgetting two essential elements of internet as a paradigm. Number one, internet does not sleep. Number two, internet does not forget. So whatever you're going to publish is going to be there for a long, long period of time. Therefore, the better thing is more about ensuring capacity building, more about sensitizing your members in your family, that let's learn to start using internet as a tool. Let us be the master of the internet rather than internet being the master of our daily lives. Let's learn to only use the electronic format in a constructive manner, and let's not be swayed down by the negative, destructive elements of cyberspace. Let's also learn to have a real balance between our real lives and internet, because the internet or cyberspace is not the real world as a whole. And we must sensitize children and our family members not to post photographs without appropriate scrubbing of data. Most of us have got smartphones, and we'll end up going ahead and clicking photographs using our smartphones and uploading the same as it is onto the internet without even scrubbing the said photographs of basic metadata that's involved therein. So if you don't do that, you're effectively giving an exact location to the cyber criminal, who can then agree to go ahead and target you at his own will. So we have to sensitize our family members that what all we can or we should upload onto the internet, what we should not, what all need to be careful of. We need to specifically sensitize our children about the massive growing pedophilic activity that we are seeing in India, and how they should not become pally or friends with unknown people, because on the internet it's hard to predict whether you're talking to a man, a dog, or a horse. Because in a scenario like this, everybody wants to hide behind the cloak of anonymity. So we will ultimately have to sensitize all of us that let's start positively focusing on the constructive elements of cyberspace rather than being swayed away by cyberspace. Let's not also endlessly waste time on cyberspace or onto the internet. Use the internet as a positive force for the purposes of propelling your dreams and ambitions and goals. Thanks.
Nowadays, you see when people go out, they're eating food at a restaurant, they take a photograph and they put it on the Instagram. And they also put their mood swings, not feeling too bright, not feeling too happy. So all these things are going on nowadays.
Absolutely.
Pawan, you see, this cyber attacks could be at three phases. One is state-sponsored. It could be because of strategic requirement. Second could be because of financial aspects, like you have these ransom PK. Third is individual groups. First group and second group are understood for strategic reasons and for financial aspects. There are a large number of attacks which are by small groups. What is their aim? Is just for déjà vu, or is just for fun and frolic?
So the fun and frolic element has long gone. Right now, it's all professional activity. The focus of a cyber attack is ultimately data. Getting access to data, which is crucial. So ransomware is like a typical example of a cyber disruption. Every 11 seconds, one company anywhere in the world becomes a victim of a ransomware attack. And the focus of the ransomware attack is to get access to your data, and only to give you access back to your data once you pay the money. Similarly, almost all the cyber disruptors and cyber attackers have this one fundamental aim: to somehow either attack data or disrupt data. Because if you're going to deprive systems and digital stakeholders of data, that's going to substantially disempower them, disfranchise them, and therefore they're going to be feeling far more vulnerable. So the ultimate aims are now very well professional. Today, all kinds of state and non-state actors engage in these kinds of activities, and they have a variety of vested agendas. Your agenda can be just about anything, but ultimately your agenda gets linked to data, links to computer systems and networks, and ultimately also is laced with a sadistic element of causing wrongful loss, damage, panic, fear to the target victim, whose data or whose systems you're potentially going to target. So it's a mix of all kinds of elements that are going to make into this. The fun element is long gone. That was a couple of years back, where people used to hack for fun just to demonstrate their technological superiority. Today, people don't waste their time. They want to use the time for the purposes of earning a quick buck or having access to data, which they can further go ahead and monetize both on the superficial net as also on the dark net. Thanks, sir.
Thanks very much.
Yes, Pawan,
So, yes, sir. The president, please.
you have some points, or can I? I have some doubts.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead and ask, sir. Why not?
Dr. Pawan Dugal, I have some doubts, particularly about the prevailing laws in the country. you have mentioned very nicely the word pandemic, cyber pandemic. I mean, the cyber pandemic word itself conveys that how the pandemic has to be controlled. Are we failing as far as cyber pandemic is concerned? Also, the Act is 2000 IT Act and amended after that. Then there are rules 211. Subsequently, also there have been subject of discussion that the privacy is not being guarded, despite constitutional enunciation on that. The bench gave that privacy is a constitutional right, though there's no separate act for privacy. Keeping in view all this, I am trying to only ask the clarification as to how the state, number one is failure of the state in respect of the stringency of law. That is, you impose law. When we had enacted in 2000, we didn't know that it's going to be such a pandemic. The punishments are hardly anything for these cyber criminals. Second is that are we not keen to protect the right of privacy of an individual? Particularly, this came up after the Pegasus disclosure. So could you please, because still the right of privacy is not, act has not been enacted in India. Vis-a-vis China has started or something. So can you clarify about the laws in India?
Thank you, Mr. President. You have actually aptly hit the nail on the head. On the cyber pandemic side, we are completely clueless. We were never prepared for the pandemic, but we were never prepared for the cyber pandemic that was supposed to come thereafter. And this cyber pandemic is now impacting all our lives. And unfortunately, the governments of the world are only focusing on trying to still address the public health emergency or the medical aspects pertaining to the pandemic. They have not yet even started applying their minds on how the cyber pandemic issues need to be addressed. Of course, there are some variations, some exceptions, like some countries have come up with dedicated cybercrime laws. So whether it's South Africa, whether it's Fiji, that have come up with dedicated laws on cybercrime, or whether we find out with some laws in some countries which have actually empowered the governments to fight not just COVID-19 infections, but also all cyber-related aspects under the COVID-19 laws. So that's broadly what's happening. But by and large, as a nation, India is clueless as far as how to fight the cyber pandemic is concerned. We are still in a mindset that our IT Act of 2000 would be sufficient. You have to quickly realize that technology has moved very, very rapidly. And therefore, it's very important to get your legal frameworks well conversant and well topical and relevant according to the requirements of the advance of technology. We realize that India is finding a unique kind of a massive policy vacuum that we have never seen in the history of independent India. At the time when I talk, India does not have any dedicated law on privacy. This is despite the Supreme Court in the case of Justice Puttaswamy versus Union of India declaring your fundamental right of privacy as an integral part of the fundamental right of life under Article 21 of the Constitution of India. Further, India chooses not to have any dedicated law on cybersecurity. At a time when China has got 3 distinctive national laws on cybersecurity. At a time when small countries like Vietnam, like Singapore, like Thailand have got dedicated laws on cybersecurity, I find India out in the wilderness. I find India is not even applying its mind that the quicker it comes out with a dedicated cybersecurity law, the better it will be. India is still under the mistaken notion that its paper tiger, the National Cybersecurity Policy of 2013 would be sufficient. Well, that policy was good, but that was in 2013. But thereafter, India never implemented the policy. So it ceased to be of any relevance. India is talking of a dedicated national cybersecurity strategy that's coming in. But I don't think that the time is ripe for a strategy now. The time for a strategy was ripe many years earlier, not now. Right now, the time has come for effective action because a strategy would not be passed by Parliament and will not have the force of law. And you would now require legal frameworks passed by Parliament, which can provide effective force of law when you come up with legal frameworks. On top of it, we also have a third handicap. India as a nation does not have a dedicated law on data protection. This at a time when Europe is galloping miles ahead with its general data protection regulation, speaks volumes of the lack of appropriate prioritization of data protection in the Indian context. No wonder in India, everybody believes that data is everybody else's common heritage. So employees today routinely steal the data of their employers at will. There was a recent survey which said that about 67% of all employees who were working from home surveyed, they found out that out of 167% of all employees said that we were retaining the company's data just in case if we had to leave it, or in case if we have to share it with competition. Now that's a kind of a new challenges that we are working on. Yes, you have the IT Act. The government is coming up in bits and spurts. It's come up with Information Technology Rules 2011. There's been immense controversy pertaining to this. But because these rules have sought again to give massive powers to the government and have also sought to bring in far more new compliance requirements, which have to be mandatorily complied with by all digital stakeholders. And they have now, for the first time, crystal clearly brought forward the criminal liability provision. Rule 7 of the IT Rules 2021 clearly say that if as an intermediary you do not comply with these rules, be prepared to go to jail because you are liable to be punished for various offenses under the Information Technology Act 2000 and also under the Indian Penal Code. So I think these kinds of jerky movements are not what India requires. India requires a constant evolution of its cyber legal jurisprudence so that all the emerging challenges that we are beginning to see on the horizon vis-a-vis cyberspace need to be efficaciously and effectively addressed by the governmental stakeholders, by appropriate legal frameworks. It's been now 13 years since India amended its Information Technology Act. The law has been crying for amendments, but because there's an absence of political will in this regard, you find that the said law is still not getting specifically going ahead and amended. So India really needs to do a lot. If India does not do what it's expected to do, and if India continues to adopt the ostrich approach, then I'm very sorry to say that maybe India will be lagging behind in the coming times. Already I find nations which are smaller than India, which are galloping ahead of India. China as a nation is galloping far ahead than India, primarily because of its massive vision of the cyber legal frameworks that it's come up in the context of regulating various activities in cyberspace. Well, India has to make its own choices, but clearly relying upon historical laws may not be the formula for success as we go forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Aman. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Pawan. I think we've run out of time now, and I now hand over the proceedings back to the President for his concluding remarks.
Thank you very much. I mean, I can only say the speaker, the scholar, the writer, and also I'll say a person who is legally qualified to do a lot of things at present which are required in our country, particularly the cyber laws. We have heard him at length. One more point, we expect you, Dr. Dugal and others, that when you are criticizing or examining or analyzing the laws, please keep in mind and give some advice that there are a lot of laws where, particularly when you come to cyber, subject to so-and-so. The law is subject to the condition that if it is used for the security or sovereignty of the nation or so-and-so, who is going to define that? Is it not a curb as far as the privacy of individuals is concerned? So you have to go into details because you are the one who is writing and a lot on this, because I have my own apprehensions that this is a handle or instrument in the hands of the people who may interpret this indifferently and try to curb the right of privacy of an individual. Then you have very finely referred to the Zac Hospital Attack. It doesn't, you see, we had no idea how this has attacked the cyber Zac Hospital. I had absolutely no idea that Outage in Bombay in 200-0 was manipulated by some outside country. You have exceedingly well described the various section of IT Act 66 and also the other acts. I will only say that the cyber interruption are a brute force. This disruption is a brute force and it infiltrates into your data and regards, irrespective of the fact what you are. So they do not discriminate. This cyber disruption does not discriminate one from another. We have to be very careful about it. Their aim only is to infiltrate and make use of it, whether they are enemy agent or agents of somebody else, or they are doing it for the sake of only money. Cyber nomenclature actually, sir, evolved, as far as I remember, long back in 1990 something, 1950 probably, that the word cyber came into being. That was cyber referred to the science of understanding the contours and the controls of the data for computer. This was somewhere in 1950. In 1990, a new word was introduced as a cyberspace that started emerging. Then we started dealing with cyberspace. And today, cyber threats have emerged in the context of hazards to your data and to yourself. So cyber disruption are often looked at cyber attacks and intrusion into the cyberspace, as they call it. And they are cause of immeasurable damage and inconvenience, not only to the citizen, but to their data. They can cause a lot of things. As I said, electric failure, you have disruption of phone, paralysis of computer system, etc. And we have immensely learned from your erudite speech. Disruption for the sake of espionage is a national sort of threat. And we have to be careful about all that. You have covered and encompassed the entire gamut of the cyber laws and cyber threats. We are indeed thankful to you for such an illuminating talk today evening. And with these words, I also thank the delegates for having come and attended this webinar. We look forward to your coming for our next webinar, which is very interesting from the point of view of all of the people who are just watching this or may like to. Public perception on corruption in criminal justice system. I could have given straightway corruption in criminal justice system, but I do not want to label that I have thought it and there is a. What is the public perception on corruption in criminal justice system? And criminal justice system involves the entire gamut, starting from the enforcement industry, prosecution, as you know, and judiciary. So we have an interesting subject, 10th September, 6 p.m. We are calling some eminent speaker from the police organizations, as well as from the legal department. Some of them the legally qualified lawyers, some may be judge also. Let us hope that we have a very, very scintillating discussions on this subject also. With these words, I once again thank you. This is 10th September, 6 p.m. And subject you have seen is indeed, I am really enamored that let us see what these people have to say, that police officers and the legal luminaries about this public perception. I have not dubbed it as corruption straightway, but what is the public perception? Why this public perception there? With these words, I once again thank all of you for having come here and joined us on the interactive session today evening on the cyber disruption. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Thank you, Pawan. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. It's been a pleasure. Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thank you, sir.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Good evening.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Gurinder,
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Nata, Ajay Sena.
Thank you, sir.